Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Tissot PRX 40mm. This watch is available from TissotWatches.com for €395. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is protected by this black cardboard sleeve. On the top of the sleeve we have the Tissot T emblem, Swiss flag, Tissot logo and Swiss watches since 1853. So one removes the cardboard sleeve and this is the cardboard watch box itself. On the top of the hinge lid we have the same again printed on the lid, and you can see it's got a matte textured finish to it. On the base it has a message: time is precious, the planet is too, 100% recyclable watch box, cushion made of RPET. So on one hand one can give credit to Tissot for being conscientious and using environmentally friendly materials which are recyclable. It's good that they're using recycled cardboard for the watch box and sleeve. On the other hand, it's disappointing. Now, cardboard watch boxes in the low tier are acceptable between €0 and €100, but this is at the upper end of the low tier, €0 to €500 price point. It's €395. Therefore, I would expect to see a higher quality watch box, for example, a plastic watch box, alternatively a vinyl or PU leather coated watch box, alternatively a vinyl or PU leather watch roll. Cardboard watch boxes at €395 for Swiss made pieces like this are a disappointment. On a positive note, the cardboard watch box is very well executed, contrasting red, and you can see on the underside of the hinge lid has the same again printed. There's a cutout in the base which houses a padded pillow cushion. Padded pillow cushion is upholstered with black fabric to a good standard, good quality stitching, and in the base there's a cutout in the cardboard base which houses the items which I'll show you. So although basic, it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping, and the presentation is okay, but it doesn't say to me Swiss made, doesn't say to me quality with brand heritage since 1853. With regards to items, it comes with this owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and also translated into a plethora of foreign languages. This doesn't just detail the movement used in this piece, the PRX 40mm, which is the ETA caliber F06.115 quartz. It also details all their other calibers for 2 to 3 hand watches as well as their chronographs. Also details the terms and conditions of the 2-year international warranty, which is good. So it's an excellent quality owner's instruction manual, but you can see it's very thick due to covering a plethora of movements, and also it's translated into a plethora of foreign languages. And again, this is a production cost cutting measure, because rather than printing singular owner's instruction manuals for each piece, each version of the PRX and their other models, they simply condensed it all into one owner's instruction manual covering every model in their collection and every movement used. And I dislike to see this. I think that they should just print an owner's instruction manual specifically for the watch you're purchasing, specifically for the caliber used in it, rather than just all the movements for 2 to 3 hands, all their chronograph movements. I think it's just excessive. So that's something they could refine. One also gets this warranty card. Now, as you can see, it's got a QR code you can scan with your Android or iPhone, and it says register my watch. So you simply scan the QR code. That will activate the 2-year international warranty from the date of purchase. On the reverse, we have the barcode for the piece, the full reference number for the piece, and also it says check your warranty information and other details about your watch. And it also says it in French, and it also says it in Chinese. Also has the website TissotWatches.com/register-my-watch. So if you do not want to scan the QR code with your Android or iPhone, an alternative way to activate the warranty and register it is simply on their website, TissotWatches.com/register-my-watch. Good to have the two options, and of course doing so will activate the warranty and it will download the terms and conditions of the 2-year international warranty as well. 2 years of warranty is good. Now, I want to give credit to Tissot here, because often low-tier pieces are only covered by a 12-month international warranty between €0 and €500 price point. Mid-tier pieces are covered by the industry standard 2-year international warranty between €500 and €5,000. So it is good to see a 2-year warranty versus a 12-month warranty at €395 in the low tier. That does add value to the piece. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 44.4mm, a thickness of 10.6mm, and an internal lug width on the integrated lugs of 12mm. The integrated bracelet is flared and tapered, so it's wider than the 12mm lug width. At its widest point, the flared bracelet is 27.2mm, tapering down to 17.8 at the 2-button push butterfly clasp. 2-button push butterfly clasp is signed with high definition engraving. with both the Tissot brand logo and also 1853, the foundation of the brand. 2 button push triggers are mirror polished, correctly proportioned, and I think they could reduce the proportions because although they are correct in terms of they are good to press with one's thumb and index finger, they do project quite proud from the left and the right hand flanks, and there's no need for them to be so large. They are okay in proportion, but I think there's room for improvements because you can see, and I'll show you this in the wrist shots, the 2 button push triggers, they do project very far from the flanks, although the proportions are good. Mirror polishing is good, no sharp edges, heavily spring loaded, and it opens freely. The butterfly clasp is not lapped, and therefore one doesn't have to close the left or the right hand portion. It doesn't overlap, they simply butt together, as you can see, so it doesn't matter whether you close the left or the right first. And the internal of the butterfly clasp is solid milled 316L grade stainless steel, as one would expect. Flawless mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks, and we've got matte bead blasted to the centre sections, which are milled. So snap shut with a nice positive click, and it's good to see it signed versus being sterile. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished stick indices and the silver mirror polished baton handset. The baton hands are faceted versus being flat, which is good. They're correctly proportioned. If you look at the baton hand, you can see for the minute hand it is longer and extends nearly to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring, and the shorter hour hand is nearly long enough to extend to the stick indices. So one can immediately differentiate between the minute and hour hand, which is good. The needlepoint second hand extends all the way to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring, so the handset looks the correct proportion for the dial diameter. The Sunray blue dial is very aesthetically pleasing. I like the way it changes from an electric blue to a navy blue depending on light conditions. So it is reflective, but it's not as shiny and reflective as a glossy enamel blue dial. It does look more aesthetically pleasing than a textured matte dial because of its smooth finish. So it's very well done. Quality of the white minute ticks on the chapter ring is high definition and crisp. The printing is good. Printing of the text on the dial, Tissot logo, 1853 and also PRX is good. Looks balanced. What I like about it is it's not over-branded with unnecessary text or specification. For example, we don't have 100 meters printed on the dial at 6. That is negligible information because this is a daily wear piece or potentially a dress piece, but nonetheless. Water resistance rating is appropriate for a dive piece, but not for a daily wear piece or dress piece. It should be clean. So Tissot 1853 looks good. PRX looks good, and I like the fonts used for PRX. Either side of the 6 o'clock index on the dial we have Swiss made, and that's good. They're right to be proud of that because of course this is a Swiss caliber, the ETA caliber F06.115 quartz, and also the watch itself, the PRX, is assembled in Switzerland, so they're right to put Swiss made on the dial. So I like the dial execution, I like the mirror polishing to the faceted baton hands, and I also like the stick indices which give the piece a vintage 1970s aesthetic. However, the negative of the baton hands and the negative of the stick indices, as I'll show you in the Lume test, is they don't allow for a large area or a large plot for the BGW9 Super Luminova to be applied. Yes, stick indices do give the piece a vintage aesthetic like a 1970s piece. The problem is they don't allow for a large area. For example, with larger rectangular indices, as per Submariner or Submariner Date for example, one can infill with a good depth of 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 Super Luminova, and of course there's a larger area, there's a larger plot. Same applies to the hands. With these faceted baton hands, they are very slender, the cutouts for the Super Luminova, and therefore there's not a large area, a large plot for the BGW9 to be applied. On a positive note, there is a good colour tone match. The BGW9 on the stick indices and the baton hands looks pure white. It doesn't look more cream or white on the indices or the hands. They've got the colour tone match correct. So, flat sapphire crystal is good, AR coating is good. Now, there is a negative to it. This is the quartz version of the PRX, not the automatic, but it has a very deep Rehaut, rather like the automatic. And there's no reason for it. This does not need to have such additional clearance above the second hand on top of the cannon pinion. The sapphire crystal could be closer to the dial, the date complication, and of course the handset. This is the kind of depth of Rehaut one would expect to see with an automatic, not a quartz power piece. The benefit of this being quartz powered is the quartz is thinner than the automatic. It doesn't have a rotor. And of course the other benefit should be they should slim down the case further by making the sapphire crystal closer to the handset, closer to the dial and the date complication. This could have a thinner Rehaut. That's the point I'm making. It doesn't. And it looks like a very deep Rehaut for a quartz. When I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see the depth of it. Now, if this were powered by the automatic, yes, I would say one could be magnanimous about it because, of course, it's a thicker caliber and therefore the hand stack height is taller and the second hand needs additional clearance to prevent it fouling the underside of the sapphire crystal. That's a given. But we're not. We're looking at a quartz which is powered by the caliber F06.115, which is very thin. And the hand stack height on this caliber is not tall. So therefore it doesn't need to have such clearance between the underside of the sapphire crystal and the second hand set on the top of the cannon pinion. So Rehaut is too deep and this is not aesthetically pleasing as a result. It just doesn't look correct. They could make the legibility, the readability, the functionality of this better if the sapphire crystal were closer to the dial and the date complication. As it stands, it looks too deep. Now, when you view the piece straight on, it does have good quality AR coating and the clarity of the sapphire crystal is good. But it doesn't look invisible, and it could be made to look invisible if they slim down the Rehaut. The problem with having a deep Rehaut, although it's brushed satin finish versus mirror polished, it does bounce the light around the dial. And of course, it's compounded by the reflective property of the stick indices, which are beveled rather than being flat. So what we have here is like a 360-degree mirror because although the Rehaut is brushed satin finish and therefore it refracts the light rather than reflecting it as per mirror polishing, it bounces the light around and therefore when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle you can see you get a lot of glare. The AR coating does work well to reduce the glare, but you can see a lot of the glare is caused by the depth of Rehaut acting like a mirror because when the light enters the sapphire crystal, it's then bounced around, it's reflected 360 degrees around like a 360-degree mirror because of this deep Rehaut refracting the light. It could be improved, that's the point I'm making, and it's disappointing to see that on a Swiss-made piece at this price point. Bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, flat profile versus domed profile. They've made the correct decision by using a flat profile bezel because it does complement the case, which of course is tonneau case with angles, rather like Gerald Genta design from the 1970s, and I like the hexagon shape of it, or hexagonal shape, and the flats and the transitions do have a Genta aesthetic. It does visually look like a 1970s design. So correct choice for the flat profiling, mirror polished to the top edge and also mirror polished to the side of it or the edge, and there's a large chamfer which deletes the transition between the flat top and the edge. So very high quality mirror polishing to it. Tonneau case is longitudinally brushed satin finish on the top, and then we've got vertical brushed satin finishing on the ends, bevels, and then on the flanks of the case it's longitudinally brushed satin finish, and we've got a large mirror polished bevel which runs the full length of the case, marking the transition between the top of the case and the flanks. It's good. I like the mirror polished bevel. Visually it deletes some of the meat and also makes it look very aesthetically pleasing because we've got a nice curved undercut to it, and that also has a large mirror polished bevel that deletes the sharp edge. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor, but visually it doesn't look like a tall, thick, slab-sided tonneau case, and I like the fact they've slimmed down the meat and they've deleted a lot of it from the underside, and therefore the flanks look very low profile, so it's good looking. The angular profile to the case is brutalist in design, or one could say Genta inspired, but I like the angular profiling and the transitions. They are well finished. No sharp corners, no sharp edges, and they've deburred every edge of it to a good standard. Luster is good on the top of the case, luster is good on the flanks. Push-pull crown. So let's test the push-pull crown execution. 100 metres of hermetic seal with strong specification for a daily wear piece. For example, they could have just made it 50. Coin edge, and it's partially recessed into the right hand flank, which is beneficial because when you flex the wrist, the crown is correctly proportioned, but it's not too large. As per a dive watch crown, it doesn't dig into the back of the hand. Coin edge is very good, it's sharp, high definition. Large chamfer which deletes the tips of the coin edge teeth. Matte be-blasted background to the dome's cap, and it's embossed with the Tissot T emblem which is mirror polished to a good standard. Large enough to be grippy and tactile, easy to get good purchase with your index finger and thumb. So push-pull crown, pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. I'm actually just going to pull it out to the second click and move the hand out of the way so you can see it better. So first click is the quick set complication. When you rotate the crown clockwise, it advances the quick set date to the next day of the month. The font is high definition, it's crisp and sharp, it's not too thick and blurry, and there's a good contrast between the black Arabic numerals and the white date wheel. Alignment is correct. The Arabic numerals on the singles and the doubles are not too far to the left or the right of the date window, and they're not too high or too low. Clicks over with a nice light clicking sensation. Feels very similar to a Miyota 2115 quartz used in the Casio Joro, for example. It's got that light clicking sensation. Much lighter than a Seiko NH35A, which has a much heavier clicking sensation. Feels lighter than a Miyota 9015 or an SW200-1, which you may be familiar with. So I like the feeling of it. It feels precise, aligned is correct, but I think they could improve it because they could enlarge the aperture or the date window in the dial, and they could therefore enlarge the Arabic numerals, and therefore that would enhance legibility. But it's good, it's easy to read, and the legibility of the font is good. So I like the alignment and I like the feeling of it. The clicks aren't loud, they're not audible, but you can feel the crown clicking over. So it does feel very good, although one can't hear it as per an NH35A, which has a loud clicking sound. Putting it out to the second click hacks the movement. So if you look at the second hand, you can see it's stopped dead. So therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the ETA caliber F06.115 quartz. We're now in the time setting position. Light resistance, very similar to a Miyota 2115 quartz, and it feels much lighter than an NH35A, a 9015 or an SW200-1, as one would expect with a quartz. So it feels smooth, doesn't feel rough or gritty, doesn't feel too stiff. It feels balanced. There is resistance in it, and I like it because it's not too heavy, it's not stiff, but it's also not too light as per a Miyota 2115, which is too light. So it's got that nice medium resistance to it. The meshing of the gearing is good. Minimal backplay, that's what I like about it. When you rotate the coin edge crown, there's an almost immediate response to the baton hand, and one doesn't have to take up a lot of slack, so that's beneficial. It does feel refined. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click. That reinstates the 100 meters of hermetic seal, and you can see the second hand begins to tick around the dial once again. However, this is a disappointment. If you look at the second hand, you can see it doesn't align correctly with the white minute ticks or second ticks on the chapter ring, and it should do. And this is a Swiss-made piece at €395. There is no excuse for Tissot letting this pass quality control inspection. If this were a low-tier piece below €100, yes, one could be magnanimous and say, okay, the second hand doesn't align correctly. It doesn't hit bang on each of the ticks of the 60 white ticks on the chapter ring. But in this case, we're looking at a very precise caliber. The ETA caliber F06.115 quartz is high quality. It's a Swiss-made quartz. We're not looking at a basic Miyota 2115 here used in a Joro. So really, what I'm saying is the second hand should hit every single tick on the chapter ring bang on the centre, and this one doesn't, and it's very disappointing because it's obviously past quality control with Tissot. And at €395, this is Swiss made with a Swiss made caliber. It should have correct alignments. The second hand ticks should match the ticks on the chapter ring, but they don't. They're misaligned. Problem is, you cannot reset that. The only way you can correct it is if you actually take the movement out of the watch, and then you have to remove the second hand from the cannon pinion and reset it correct, which is what Tissot should be doing in the factory. When they set the cannon pinion, they should align it bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock index on the dial, which is the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring effectively. So they haven't done that. When they've assembled this, they've pressed the second hand into the cannon pinion, misaligned, and of course now every single tick doesn't align correctly with the white minute ticks on the chapter ring. Dreadful. €395, Swiss made with a Swiss ETA caliber, and they can't get it correct. It's just not good enough. Right, so let's look at the bracelet in detail. So, as I've detailed, 12mm lug width internally, and it's flared. 27.2 aggressive taper down to 17.8. So as you can see, this is the problem with the integrated end links to the tonneau case. No articulation whatsoever. It's not like a female pitted end link, and they've made a mistake here. Now, I appreciate it does have a very short lug-to-lug of 44.4, but effectively, the lug-to-lug is really longer because this end link, because it doesn't articulate, it becomes like an extension of the tonneau case. This is particularly detrimental if you have a smaller 6 to 7 inch wrist. Now, you should benefit from this because it's compact at 44.4, as I'll show you in the wrist shots. It should be the perfect fit for a 6 to 7 inch wrist due to its compact lug-to-lug, but it's not because it has this fixed end link in the integrated bracelet. It should pivot, but there's no pivoting whatsoever. It's dreadful. And all they would have to do to make this pivot is simply machine a bevel on the internals of the tonneau case where the integrated link fits into it and machine a bevel on the top edge and the lower edge of the integrated end link, and then it would be able to pivot as per a female pivoted end link, and then one would get a refined fit. And I'll show you in the wrist shot why this is a problem, because one gets this abhorrent gap beneath the undercut of the tonneau case and also the end link itself. There's this gap permanently, even on my 8-inch wrist. So they've made a mistake here, and it's dreadful because there is no articulation. Moving on to the next link, you can see it does articulate freely, which is good. It doesn't feel stiff or kink. Now, this amount of articulation, you can see, that's how the end link in the integrated bracelet should articulate. That's what I'm talking about. So had they machined bevels internally in the head of the piece and also externally on the integrated bracelet to allow additional clearance, then you would have this pivot. And it would be beneficial because this would make the fit better for a 6 to 7-inch wrist and a 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively, and it would enhance comfort level and feel good factor. That's what I would like to see on this end link going to the case, which is fitted with a spring bar, which is quick release, but it doesn't. Now, in terms of play, it also has side to side play, which is dreadful because it clicks. I'll check the other side for continuity. Again, end link doesn't articulate, it's fixed into the integrated lugs, but the second link in the bracelet, of course, does pivot smoothly. Doesn't feel stiff or kink. But you can see the problem. This one actually clicks as well. It's got lateral side-to-side play. Dreadful. Now, in terms of bracelet finishing, beautiful luster to the top side, underside and flanks. Nice fine-grained satin finishing, which matches the tonneau case satin finishing. So that's good. No sharp edge to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. That's good. Doesn't scratch the wrist. Doesn't pull arm hairs. That's good. But it's sloppy. Lateral, side to side, up and down play in every single direction. This does not say to me Swiss made. This does not say to me €395. This does not say to me brand heritage since 1853. This is the kind of sloppy bracelet one would expect with a low tier Chinese made piece below €100. And of course, if it were Chinese made within the low tier below €100, yes, one could be magnanimous. But this is at the upper end. €500 is the top limit of low tier. This is at $395, and this is Swiss made. We're not looking at a Chinese made watch here between €0 and €100. This is Swiss made and $395. Dreadful. Let's check the other side. Again, sloppy. Longitudinal, lateral, side to side, up and down play. And we are looking at significant play in every single one of the links. So Y links, flat link profile, there's no reason to have this much side-to-side play. It's up and down play, side-to-side play, lateral play in every single direction. Absolutely dreadful. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, you can see what we have here is the pins are split pins. So rather than using screw pins, what they've done is they've used split pins. These are the cheapest option. Pins and collars for push pins are a better option, as used by Grand Seiko, and they can be made with very tight tolerances. And then the cheaper alternative, the less expensive production cost alternative, is split pins, which are seen on low-tier Chinese pieces between €0 and €100. One doesn't expect to see split pins used on a €395 Swiss-made piece like this. It should be 1.2mm screw pins, but they're absent. And this is a clear production cost cutting measure by Tissot in order to maximise profit margin per piece. And it is dreadful to see this on a Swiss-made piece. And you can now see the problem of split pins because, of course, sloppy, because they don't take up the slack in the holes. The holes are oversized. The split pins then compress, and then what you have is you don't get a friction interference fit as per 1.2mm screw pins tightening up the tolerances. What you have is this excess play in every single direction. They didn't even use pins and collars as per Seiko and Grand Seiko. They use split pins. Dreadful. So let's check the articulation. Now, on a positive note, it is fluid. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink because of all the excess play, of course. Other side, we'll check it for continuity. Again, fluid, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. So finishing is good. Brushed satin finishing, no sharp edges, doesn't pull arm hairs, articulates freely. Negative is sloppy, and of course it rattles. It really does say to me, low tier, €0 to €100 Chinese integrated bracelet piece. This does not say to me, Swiss made, €395. Dreadful. Let's check the butterfly clasp execution. 2 button push triggers are correctly proportioned, although they could be reduced. They're rather large. Spring-loaded, heavily spring-loaded triggers work well. Let's check the hinge pins. Left-hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Excess play, again, every single direction. Lateral, side to side, up and down, longitudinal play. And it is significant. It's wobbly. Dreadful. Left-hand inner hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Excess side to side, lateral play. Dreadful. Right-hand inner hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Excess play, again. Finally, right-hand hinge pin outer articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Sloppy. Lateral, side to side, up and down play. And this is dreadful. €395 Swiss made. This says to me Chinese made below €100. Now the cumulative effect is left hand outer, left hand inner, right hand outer. All 4 hinge pins are sloppy, and of course therefore it makes a sloppy butterfly clasp. It wobbles. My concern as always, and the reason why I'm always so heavily critical about this, regardless of price point, my concern with this is not just it rattles, my concern is long-term durability with daily wear and tear. Because when one has excess play in the pins in a bracelet clasp, regardless of whether it's a micro adjustment clasp, butterfly clasp, deployant, or even buckle and tang, when one has play in the pins, when the holes are oversized in diameter and the pins are undersized in diameter, what that does is it places the pins under excess shear load. So inevitably what happens is the holes drilled become ovalized, the pins, the wear is exacerbated, so they become ovalized, and then you get even more play, and eventually what happens due to metal fatigue is the pin shears due to the excess shear load, and of course breaks, and then the clasp fails and the piece falls on the ground getting damaged. That's why I'm so heavily critical, because this kind of sloppy bracelet says to me there is a lack of long-term durability. And of course, one could be magnanimous about this kind of play if this were a low-tier Chinese-made piece between €0 and €100. But we're talking €395 and Swiss-made. It's dreadful. Now on a positive note, quality of the mirror polishing is good, top side, underside and flanks. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks, so it doesn't feel sharp. The corners have been deburred, so there's no sharp corners on the internals, that's good. And there's no sharp edges to the pushers. Mirror polishing is good, centre section is milled and it's matte B blasted, so they've done a good job of the finishing, but the build quality control, materials and tolerances are poor. So they need to update this. This is dreadful. It's just not good enough. Let's look at the case back in detail. Now, again, another disappointment. This piece says to me disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. Production cost-cutting measure after production cost-cutting measure. Pressed on case back. Now on a positive note, 100 metres of hermetic seal is strong specification, because strictly speaking this is a daily wear piece or dress piece. It's not a dive piece. 50 metres would suffice, but 100 metres it's pressed on. That's the problem. It should be mandatory at €395 to either be a screwed down case back with 4 flathead screws, or alternatively a screw down case back as per a dive piece with a external thread on the case back mating with an internal thread in the head of the piece. This is a pressed on case back, the least expensive option. It's less expensive than a screwed down case back, it's less expensive than a screw down case back. And it's dreadful to see this on a Swiss made piece at €395. Yes, I appreciate it's not a dive piece, but 100 metres could easily be provided with a screw down case back or screwed down case back. And it's just production cost cutting measure after production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece for Tissot. That's the reason why they do it. Pressed on case backs are much less expensive to make than screw down case backs. That's the reason why. Now on a positive note, it's concentric CNC lathe tool machined, which refracts the light, which is good. Perfectly smooth, engraved around the circumference with a serial number, reference number, specification of the piece. High definition engraving is good, it's high definition and crisp and sharp, but in terms of sharpness I'm referring to the definition, not the feeling of it. It's not rough, so therefore it is comfortable. Positive is, it is low profile and flat, it's not deep and bubble back profiled, and therefore it does give a good fit to the wrist, it does feel comfortable, and of course it does complement this piece being 10.6. Quick release stainless steel spring bars are the correct choice, because one can easily exchange the Y-Link bracelet for an alternative rubber strap, and it's good. But I think it's a mistake to use the flathead screws in the levers. I would prefer to see the caps polished and flat, because the problem with these flathead screws, when they're slotted like this and they're tall, they can rub against the wrist and therefore feel scratchy, and flat tops to quick release levers are better, but these are low profile enough. They are beneath the case back, and therefore they're not going to rub against the wrist, so it's okay. But I think they could do a better job of the levers. Rather than using flathead screws, they could use caps which are circular and flat. So this is again the least expensive option. But on a positive note, the integrated end links in the Y-link bracelet are a good fit to the head of the piece. Now when I say good fit, I'm talking about the profiling, but of course, as I've detailed, there's side-to-side lateral play, which is unacceptable. They could refine that. The underside of the tonneau case is concentric CNC lathe tool machines to a beautiful lustre, and then they've brush satin finished it again. And the undercuts have large bevels on the left and the right hand flank. The tips of the integrated lugs have bevels, and that deletes the corners. So they've done a good job of the head of the piece finishing, but there is room for improvement with regards to the quick release levers, as I've detailed. Right, so I'll give you wrist shots and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now just bear with me, I'm going to remove my Concord 40. And then I will continue. Now I haven't sized the bracelet. One thing I like about it is it has half links. There's a half link on the 6 and a half link on the 12 o'clock side, which is beneficial because you can centralise the clasp. For example, if you need to remove one full link from this bracelet to size it correctly, you can remove a half link from the 6 and a half link from the 12 side versus just one full link from one side. This is good because it means the 2 button push triggers and the clasp sit centrally on the wrist rather than offset by a link. So good to see half links. It's often the mistake, regardless of price point, low tier, mid tier, high tier. And brands and micro brands often make this mistake because, of course, it's a given. There's a lack of micro adjustment and on-the-fly adjustment with a butterfly clasp. One has to be magnanimous about that. But they compound that because they only have full links in the 6 and the 12 side. This has a half link and a half link, which is good. And, for example, one full link, you can take a half and a half versus just one from one side. So I like that you can centralise the clasp. However, clasp is far too bulky. They've made mistake after mistake with this piece because I'll show you what I mean by mistake. Look at the curvature of this. There are 2 problems with this which are fundamental. And Tissot have been making watches since 1853 in Switzerland. There's no excuse. They're not a new micro brand. They've been making butterfly clasp for over 100 years. There's no excuse for getting it wrong in 2025 with that amount of brand heritage. The portion in the centre section is far too thick. It's like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel. So there's too much meat. The outer portions fold into it in the milled cutouts. So that's not the problem. The problem is the actual centre section is far too thick. That's the first problem. It's like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel. The second problem is the curvature is wrong. Not only is it too thick, but also the curvature is too curved, rather than being flatter and longer. And it's too short. So the problem is you get this permanent gap beneath the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the 2 button push triggers. And you can see there's an abhorrent gap on the 6 o'clock side and also on the 12 o'clock side. Now this applies regardless of whether you have a 6-inch wrist, 7-inch wrist, 8-inch wrist. This is on all wrist sizes. This does not fit a 6 to 7, it does not fit a 7 to 8. The curvature is wrong. It's too curved. It should be longer and flatter, and also should be thinner. That's the point I'm making. Problem is, when you close it, you then of course get this problem which is then magnified or exacerbated because you can now see the problem. The flat link bracelet, the Y-links, never sit close to the wrist because you now have this huge gap on the 6 o'clock side and a huge gap on the 12 side. Can you see it now? Dreadful. This is not how a butterfly clasp and an integrated bracelet should fit around a wrist. The curvature. You can see the curve is too curved. Rather than being flatter and longer, what they've done is they've made the curve too curved, and therefore you then have this permanent gap. And again, this is compounded by the amount of meat to the centre section. Because this is a thick slab, it will never sit close to the wrist, but the thickness prevents it happening in any case. So even if they got the curvature correct, the thickness is too thick. And it's just dreadful to see this. 1853 heritage, Swiss made, and they can't even get a butterfly clasp correct. Just look at the gap. This is one of the worst butterfly clasps I've ever seen. And I've reviewed over 500 pieces on my channel, low tier, mid tier, high tier, and a plethora of integrated bracelet pieces, mid tier, low tier. And I can tell you, this is one of the worst fitting butterfly clasps I've seen. This does not say to me Swiss made. This does not say to me €395. This says low tier, €0 to €100 Chinese made piece. If this were €100, one could be magnanimous. But €395, this is the best that Tissot can produce in 2025. It's just not good enough. Dreadful fit. Dreadful fit for a 6 to 7 inch wrist, dreadful fit for a 7 to 8 inch wrist. Look at the gap. Just incredible. So, in terms of the fit of the head of the piece, that's not the only problem. Look at the abhorrent gap underneath the tips of the lugs. Tonneau case. Huge gap, even on my large 8-inch wrist. Now, one has to realise this is a compact case. We're not looking at a long case with a 49mm lug to lug here. This is short. It's 44.4. Normally, I'd be critical of a case having such compact lug to lug because 48 is the sweet spot. But they can't even get that right. The fundamentals. 44.4 is compact. It should have a nice compact fit for a 6 to 7 or a 7 to 8. But look at the gap underneath the tips of the lugs of the tonneau case. You can now see the problem of the integrated end link not pivoting as per a female pivoted end link. It kinks permanently. It's fixed in the wrong position. It can't articulate or angle downwards at any time because it just does not articulate. It's permanently set in the wrong angle. Just dreadful to see this. So you can see, regardless of how you flex the wrist, you've always got this gap underneath the tonneau case plus underneath the end link in the bracelet. So regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 or a 7 to 8 inch wrist, this will never fit. It never fits correctly. This diminishes comfort level and feel good factor. And it would be so easy to correct because all they have to do is machine bevels internally into the integrated lug on the tonneau case and machine bevels on the top and the lower edge of the Y-link end link in the bracelet, as per the other links. Because if you move to the next link on, the second link, you can now see it pivots, rather like a female pivoted end link. That's how it should be because they've machined more clearance. So you can see that's able to pivot. That's the amount of articulation, the pivoting, one should be seeing on this end link in the bracelet fitted to the head of the piece. Just like that. And then it would close up the gap. But you can see this can never close up the gap on the end link because it's fixed. There is zero articulation. One of the worst integrated end links I've seen on a piece. Regardless of whether it's low tier, mid tier, high tier, this is just dreadful from Tissot. And you can now see the problem. They could have made this so much better because it does have a very flat case back. This piece is not thick. It's not 13mm plus. It's only 10.6. It's 100 metres with a flat sapphire crystal. We're not looking at a piece with a box top hat crystal with 2mm of thickness and a bubble back case back here. The flanks are actually very low profile and thin. So this should sit very close to the wrist. It should angle around the wrist with nice angular or curvature. And you can see it just doesn't. It sits on top of the wrist like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. Too much gap on the 6 side, too much gap on the 12 side, and it just never sits close to the wrist. Regardless of how you flex the wrist, regardless of how you size the bracelet, tight or loose, you're never going to get the end link to move because it's fixed. And it's got this permanent kink. And then the second link then drops down vertically. It's just one of the worst looking integrated end links I've ever seen. Now on a positive note, the taper is aggressive. So taper is good. And I do like it because 40mm head of the piece, it's a given. It does need some meat on the bracelet to balance it. So 27.2 tapering down to 17.8 does have good aggressive taper. I think they could have reduced it slightly to make the taper less aggressive, more straight and parallel, because it is very wide at the head of the piece, but has a very aggressive taper down to the clasp. It is good when you get down to the butterfly clasp at 17.8, but you can see, although it does have a beautiful luster to it, the brush satin finishing is good, no sharp edge, so when it floats up and down the wrist, it doesn't scratch the wrist or pull arm hairs. That's good. But the problem is the fit is dreadful on the clasp, as I've detailed, due to the gap. And then we've got a dreadful fit to the head of the piece, the tonneau case plus the static end link rather than pivoting. It just has this permanent kink. So disappointing fit. Comfort level is poor. Feel good factor is poor. Of course, it would be better on the strap alternative, either a leather strap or rubber strap. And of course, this bracelet, it's a real shame because the finishing is very good. The luster is beautiful. Taper is good. Proportions are good. I like that the links aren't too thick and bulky, but really they've spoiled it by having this fixed end link and of course, dreadful fit to the case as a result. So just does not fit well. Now, in terms of balance, it does feel balanced. I want to give credit where credit's due. 133 grams. Now bear in mind, it does have a very long bracelet. I can easily slide an index finger beneath bracelets and butterfly clasps at all times. This would fit up to an 8.5 inch wrist size. There are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet to size this down to a minimum 6, up to a maximum 8.5, as you can see. And I do like it's got half links on the 6 and the 12 side, as I've detailed. Bracelet feels comfortable, head of the piece feels comfortable in terms of balance, but feel good factor and comfort level overall are diminished due to the poor fit. Heft is good at 133 for a 40mm head of the piece with an integrated bracelet. I would expect this to be circa 135 to 140, so it's actually surprisingly light, and that's the benefit of it being the quartz powered version versus the automatic, because of course the quartz is lighter than the automatic, and this does feel balanced. Head of the piece balances the integrated bracelet, balances the clasp, so they've got the balance correct, the taper correct, but just the fit is dreadful. You can see that kink now. Kink on the 6, kink on the 12 side. And I really dislike the way the bracelet then drops vertically suddenly. So they really need to refine this simply by machining bevels internally to the head of the piece and bevels on the Y link in the end link. And then it could pivot as per the second link. It's just a dreadful mistake to see. And if this were a new microband, one could be magnanimous, or alternatively a low tier Chinese brand, one can be magnanimous, but not €395. And a Swiss-made brand with heritage since 1853, it's wholly unacceptable to make these kind of fundamental errors, as you can see. So disappointing. And as I've detailed, what we're looking at is production cost-cutting measure after production cost-cutting measure, mistake after mistake, pressed on case back, butterfly clasp is incorrectly profiled, and then of course we've got fixed static end link, incorrect fit. So let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. This uses BGW9 on the stick indices and BGW9 on the baton handset. Right, so that's now fully charged. And as you can see, disappointing. This watch is just disappointment after disappointment. Look at the stick indices. We're looking at a maximum of 2 to 3 layers, not even 3 to 4 layers. Of BGW9 Super Luminova. On the hands, we're looking at a maximum of 3 to 4. We're not looking at 5 to 6 layers. The baton hands, the potency of the exciter is okay performance, but this is definitely not 5 to 6 layers on the baton hands. 3 to 4. Stick indices, there is no potency to the exciter whatsoever. They've immediately faded to nothing. This is one of the worst performing BGW9 stick indices performance I've seen. And I've reviewed over 500 pieces from low tier to mid tier to high tier. And if we just focus on the low tier between €0 and €500, the reason why I'm so critical of this is low tier Chinese pieces between €0 and €500, they are capable of doing this. And I'll use Baltony as an example. Baltony make date just homages with stick indices, and they use BGW9, but one gets 5 to 6 layers. That's the point I'm making. And although they use dots next to the indices, they actually perform very well. The baton hands perform very well. So there's no excuse for a piece costing €395, a Swiss-made piece, not having better performance, because Baltony are retailing the pieces between circa €200 and €300, not €395. So this is the reason why I'm so critical. It's so bad that, just to clarify, it's so bad that the camera cannot autofocus on the stick indices because the application of the BGW9 is so lacking in depth. I think we're looking at a maximum of 2 to 3 layers on the stick indices and a maximum of 3 to 4 on the handset. You can see when I charge it with the UV lights, 100 UV LEDs, the potency of the exciter on the baton hands looks good, but the stick indices, they're dreadful. And even when it's fully charged, the indices have negligible performance. The camera struggles to focus because we're looking at a maximum of 2 to 3 layers. And immediately the exciter is fading rapidly to nothing. So it's like they didn't apply any BGW9 whatsoever. Baton hands are 3 to 4. And they really need to have 5 to 6 on the stick indices, 5 to 6 on the baton hands. €395. This does not say to me Swiss made. This does not say to me since 1853 heritage. This does not say to me €395. It's really like a €0 to €100 low tier Chinese piece. Dreadful. So hands are okay, but there's room for improvement. Stick indices are dreadful. That's the truth of it. Very disappointing. So let's discuss the movement use because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So this is powered by the ETA calibre F06.115 quartz, which is Swiss made. It's been in service since 2019, so at this stage, in 2025, it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Swiss calibre. Has 3 jewels, has hacking. Quick set date complication works well, as I've demonstrated. The battery life is stated as 68 months, which is 5.5 years, and that is a credit. That is something I really like about it, because typically quartz movements, and I'll use the Miyota 2115 used in the Casio Joro for example, have a 2 to 3 year battery life. Alternatively, mecha quartz movements have a typical 3-year battery life if you use the chronograph 60 minutes per day. So to get 68 months, which is 5.5 years from a quartz, is exceptional and it's excellent. The long battery life is something I really like about this ETA caliber F06.115. So the other thing I like about it is its heavy drive, and what heavy drive means is the second hand has shock resistance, and the idea is when it ticks it reduces the shock of the second hand ticking, and that's meant to actually perfect the alignment. So the heavy drive is beneficial because often with second hands the shock of the tick of the movement causes the second hand to bend. So this has a shock resistant second hand and they call it heavy drive. Problem is the alignment's wrong. It's incorrect because, as I've detailed, if you look at the second hand, the tip of it doesn't align correctly with the white minute ticks on the chapter ring as it should do, and this is fundamental. And as I've detailed, I'm heavily critical of this because if this were a low-tier Chinese made piece powered by Miyota 2115, yes, one can be magnanimous about the second hand not hitting bang on the white minute ticks, bang on the centre, because of course we're not looking at a Grand Seiko here. But the point is, this is not a 0 to 100 euro Chinese made piece powered by Miyota 2115. This is a Swiss made piece at €395 powered by a high quality ETA caliber F06.115 quartz, which is Swiss made. There is no problem with the alignment of the caliber. The problem is the quality control, the build quality of Tissot when they're assembling the movements, because it's very simple for a watchmaker to set the second hand bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock index. Not too far to the left or the right, but bang on the centre. Bang on the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. There's no excuse for a second hand not being bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock index and therefore bang on the centre of every single tick. Because the caliber F06.115 does not have any alignment issues. The alignment issue is caused by manual error. The watchmaker that set this second hand didn't do it correctly. That's the point. This should not have passed quality control. It should have been rejected and then they should have taken off the second hand, off the cannon pinion, and reset it to get it right. Because that's the kind of quality control one expects with a Swiss made piece. Dreadful. So, alignment is usually correct, but in this case it's not. On a positive note, what I like about it is it does have an EOL. EOL stands for end of life indicator. And an EOL indicator is beneficial because it does have a long battery life of 5.5 years or 6 to 8 months. It warns you when the battery is depleted. So before the movement stops, before it fails, it has an EOL, an end-of-life indicator, and the way it displays the battery power reserve being depleted or exhausted is the second hand jumps every 4 seconds. Sometimes EOL, or end-of-life indicators, they make the second hand jump every 2 seconds. So I'll use the VH31 as an example of that. The VH31 usually ticks at 4 ticks per second, and it has an EOL. So and Seiko Eco drives are another one. They have an EOL indicator that makes the second hand jump every 2 seconds, and that tells you the battery is exhausted. This one jumps every 4 seconds, so it makes it absolutely clear the battery is depleted and needs to be changed. The problem is the case back. It's pressed on, and this is not an easy case back to remove if you haven't got the specialist tool. Now, imagine if this were a screw down case back, or a screwed down case back. If it were a screwed down case back with 4 flathead screws, you could simply use a screwdriver to undo the 4 flathead screws, take off the case back, change the battery yourself. If it is a screw down case back as per a dive piece, you can use a rubber ball or it's an ordinary case back tool. Unscrew the case back, replace the battery and screw the case back on yourself. This is more difficult because I can tell you this pressed on case back is not easy to take off without the correct tool. And it's far more difficult to remove than a screw down case back or a screwed down case back. And of course, yes, one has to be magnanimous and say, well, the battery only needs to be changed every 5.5 years. But nonetheless, when it comes to changing it, it's not a job you can do easily without the correct tool. And it means you have to purchase a case back removal tool, which adds additional expense to the battery changing. And it's completely unnecessary. A screw down case back is far easier. That's the negative of this. They've used a pressed on case back to make battery changing more difficult and more expensive. Now, on a positive note, the accuracy is stellar. Minus 0.3 seconds to plus 0.5 seconds per day. Just think about that for a moment. So that's better than plus or minus 1 second per day accuracy. And it is fantastic. I can confirm this one is running at 0 seconds per day accuracy. So it's an incredibly accurate caliber. And it is good to see that accuracy minus 0.3 to plus 0.5 seconds per day, with a very high battery life of 5.5 years or 68 months. So high power reserve is something I like, high accuracy is something I like, quick set complication works well, hacking works well, setting the time works well. Movement's good. The reliability is proven beyond question because it's been in service since 2019, so at this stage in 2025 it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Swiss caliber. Really the only negative in this case is the alignment, and I'm not going to level the criticism at ETA, it's not their fault. This movement does align correctly. The second hand can be made to align correctly with the minute ticks on the chaptering. It's down to Tissot not getting it right. So that's the point. Movement's excellent. Tissot's build quality and quality control is dreadful. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, low tier piece, €0 to €500 price point. This is €395, therefore up at the upper end of the low tier. I'm going to declare it poor quality, and I'm going to declare it poor value at €395. This does face some stiff competition from other low tier brands and other low tier micro brands, made in China pieces with equal quality calibers. Yes, one has to appreciate this has a 2-year international warranty, which adds value. It doesn't have a 12-month warranty. Yes, one has to appreciate Tissot do have brand heritage since 1853. They add value. The 2-year warranty plus brand heritage adds value. But it doesn't add enough value to make this good quality and good value at €395, nor does it add enough value and quality to make it excellent quality and excellent value at €395. What we're looking at, as I've detailed, is disappointment after disappointment. Production cost-cutting measure after production cost-cutting measure. Incorrect decision after incorrect decision. Everything about this piece disappoints. Pressed on case back. Fixed static end link which doesn't articulate. Sloppy bracelet that rattles. 4 hinge pins in the butterfly clasp are sloppy. It's just disappointment after disappointment. They can't even get the BGW9 correct. Stick indices have 2 to 3 layers maximum. Baton hands have 3 to 4 layers. They haven't even applied 5 to 6 on the indices, 5 to 6 on the handset, which is the industry standard, regardless of price point. €395, Swiss made. The BGW9 does not say to me Swiss made in €395. It's dreadful. So, quality control issues, too much play in the bracelet and clasp, pressed on case back is a production cost-cutting measure, cost-cutting measure again on the BGW9, on the indices and the hands. It's just mistake after mistake. Fit of the case is dreadful due to the lack of articulation on the end links and large gap underneath the tonneau case. And again, fit on the butterfly clasp is also dreadful because, again, proportions are incorrect. Curvature, too much meat, and also you can see abhorrent gaps. So, just dreadful piece. And this is the difference between a paid shill giving a fake positive review for Tissot and a genuine watch reviewer. That's the point. So I want you to be mindful of that. I've given this an honest, credible and unbiased review as per all of my reviews. I'm not a paid shill that gives fake positive reviews. I do not hype pieces like this PRX. Poor quality, poor value. That is the truth. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Tissot PRX 40mm. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.